Good afternoon. I'm Becky Tuttle, Council Member for District 2, and I'm here with Mark Elder, a Development Analyst with the City of Wichita Economic Development Office. And today, City Council received and filed an annual report for the Stryker Sports Complex, and I'm very excited that the Stryker Sports Complex is in District 2 and really just a world-class facility. It has a facility with 11 outdoor all-sport turf fields. It also has 112,000 square feet of indoor facility and hosts various tournaments and leagues throughout the year, not just for soccer, but also for a variety of sports. And if you ever have the opportunity to drive by there at night when everything's lit up with the outdoor courses, it's just fantastic and a true amenity for our community. And when I hear people come from out of town to go and visit the area, it's very exciting because they get to see a part of Wichita maybe they wouldn't normally get to see. So, Mark, could you tell us a little bit about how Stryker is operated?
Right. So Stryker was originally, it started out as just a soccer facility several years ago, and it was kind of a public-private partnership back then. But the city started the Starbucks project several years ago with, initially it was just the Wichita Sports Forum. And what happened was the Sports Forum was so successful with the draw that it had for out-of-state attendance and all the visitors coming to town. The city looked at the opportunity to go ahead and expand the Star Bond area to include the Stryker area and to try and bring additional youth sports to Wichita. The Sports Forum has the indoor facility located kind of just across the street a little bit south, and this was an opportunity to bring outdoor sports fields to the area. We worked with the state to come up with an amendment to the project plan in order to bring that to fruition. It was, at the time, just grass fields that were used mostly locally. Put together a plan, worked with WSU for projections on that, and with that we were able to get the state to approve an additional $22 million for this facility, and that was able to fund the 10 standard sports fields to go to turf, as well as also the improvements to the championship field and the stadium. But then we were also able to fund the indoor facility that is the size of a full-size soccer field, but it's also divisible down to smaller fields to be able to host tournaments and be adapted to both the size of the age group for the tournaments as well as the other sports. Saw this as an opportunity to expand it from just soccer to any field sports. And we saw it as an opportunity to bring in additional youth to the area. There was a little bit of drainage of, the competitive soccer going to Kansas City, and now we can host tournaments here and bring additional sports here. But it's also an opportunity, the city partnered with the Sports Forum because they already had a system in place for arranging these tournaments and had connections within the youth sports community. And we saw an opportunity to have a synergy there to coordinate and grow that entire area. So we do have a lease agreement with them. The first is 10 years, and there's a variable lease term in there. But that's kind of how we started with bringing the Stryker Sports facility to where it is today.
That's great. Thank you for that explanation. Can you speak a little bit about how did we fund building Stryker?
Correct. I can't speak too much about the original Stryker as far as I believe the land was donated by a local group and they helped fund some of the improvements. But in order to bring it to the multi-sport youth facility that is today, we use what's called Star Bonds, and that's sales tax increment revenue. But the beauty of that is it captures the increased sales tax revenue that's generated in an area and has very specific criteria within the state as far as the state has provided this program for projects that generate tourism to an area. So there's a benefit to the state because the state receives sales tax revenue for that, and there's a benefit to the city. And so we're able to more or less set a cap on where the sales taxes are on the date that it's approved. And with encouraging additional investment in the retail and those attractions, any new retail sales that happen within an area, those sales tax go to pay for those improvements that we've done. So therefore, they are basically paying for themselves because they become the draw that brings in the additional sales tax revenue that wasn't there before we put in those sports facilities. And so the city issued bonds, and we worked through the state through that whole process on that. But it allows us to basically use those sales tax that we didn't have to pay for these improvements, and then in the long run, we now have all this additional revenue coming to the city and to the state.
That's a great explanation, and I live pretty close to this area, not too far away, and when there's a tournament there at Stryker, it's amazing to me because right across the street is Greenwich Place, and every restaurant is full, the hotels are full, Dave and Buster's and all the other amenities, the shopping, the retail, everything is full, and sometimes so much that, like, if there's a tournament going on, my husband and I will go down the road a little bit more, and even at the 13th and Greenwich corridor is busy, and you can see people in their soccer uniforms and the soccer moms and dads with them. So it's really providing a lot of excitement, but also a lot of revenue for the city, having that area and having people come for tournaments, because it's not just local kids playing there, right? Or not just kids, even adults playing there.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's one of the benefits of the Star Bonds is you have to meet certain criteria of the state of how many people are coming from outside the region, because the goal isn't to support a local activity. It is to create a regional draw. And you're correct. When the sports forum opened several years ago, we had reports that all the way back to Kellogg, every hotel was booked on the weekends, and they couldn't understand it for a while until they realized it was all this activity happening up all the way at 13th Street in Greenwich, and the Stryker was just the next evolution of what's going on there. And you're right. I mean, the restaurants and the hotels love these weekends and the tournaments.
Yeah, I actually, the manager, one of our managing partners of Stryker, when I went out for a visit a couple of months ago, probably even before COVID, but he said that some of the restaurants actually had requested their schedule of when the tournaments were going to be, because they're so busy, they have to have additional staff on hand, which just warms my heart, because that means, more employment opportunities, especially in District 2, but for the whole city. So great opportunity. So Star Bonds have been used to fund a variety of projects in Wichita besides just Stryker. Could you give us a few examples of what else that might be?
The other Star Bond area and Star Bond projects in Wichita are along the river. And that was actually the original Star Bond project within the city, was to use Star Bonds to fund all the riverbank improvements you see along there. It includes the Keep River Plains. That was actually our original project. That area was so successful, the city actually didn't even need to issue bonds. We were able to do a pay-as-you-go and pay off that debt without that. And then we were able to phase that and get approval with the state each time, to where as a development occurs along the river, we can make improvements to support those developments. And it allows a great opportunity where the city does not get out ahead of development, to where we're having to modify the improvements we've already done and go back and redo things, but we're able to move along with development on that. So we did that, and we've done most of those improvements along the East Bank, and then kind of have recently jumped over to the west side, starting with a project, the Rivers Apartments, and we made those improvements to the riverbank as well as Delano Park. And then most recently, in the last few years, we have a project planned to fund the new stadium.
The baseball stadium.
The baseball stadium, yes.
Yeah, pre-COVID, I was telling people that if it wasn't for the baseball stadium and all the excitement about the baseball stadium, everybody in town would be talking about Stryker, right?
Yes,
because I just think it's such a cool amenity, but also good to know that baseball as well. So I was brought into council. I was appointed to council in January of 2019, and when I was doing my onboarding process, I realized that one of the things that I knew the least about, and was probably the most complicated for me, self-admitted, was economic development and the tools and incentives that we have to help attract businesses, which attracts people, but also to retain them. And so I spent a significant amount of time with the folks in economic development, our assistant city manager, trying to learn it. So I say that just because it is complicated, and if you're not really entrenched in it, it can be confusing sometimes for people to understand. And so I've heard that there's a common misperception that Star Bond projects use new or additional taxes to build them. Could you really explain to us in a really simple way what a Star Bond is and what it's not, and that it's not a tax on our residents and our community?
Correct. The Star Bonds do not change the sales tax in an area of what somebody pays. When you shop in a Star Bond district, you're paying the same sales tax as you would within the rest of the city.
Sure.
But the change is that it captures any new retail sales tax, and that's the difference. So as you see all that growth out there and the investment with new stores, new restaurants, all of that contributes to the star bond. So we call it a base. So the state will look at the sales tax revenue they collected within the boundaries that we've described, and they will say in 2013 we generated, for simple purposes, $1 million in sales tax from that area. Okay. So then what happens is when we come in with this project, these youth sports facilities that generate and encourage additional investment with the hotels, the restaurants, all those come online. And so then 2 years later, the state looks and they say, now we generated $1.5 million in that area. So the $1 million still goes and is distributed as it normally would be, but that $500,000 of new revenue that came in just from the increase in sales is then distributed back to the city in order to pay those bond payments.
Pay the bonds.
But it does not actually increase the taxes that you pay in that area.
So really, we need to give a shout out and a big thanks to our friends at the state, because letting us have star bonds is helping us to grow our city at no expense to our residents.
Absolutely. I think the state was visionary on this program because there aren't very many states that have this, but the ability to see, and they structured it very well to say that you have to meet certain criteria, and it's a minimum $50 million of investment in an area and a minimum of $50 million in projected annual sales that have to occur. So they're looking big, and they know that it has to be big and not a small project to have this happen. But to understand that the investment in something today will create a longer and better impact in the long term for both the city and the state, that was a great opportunity to do it. I think the city of Wichita has done a very good job of capitalizing those opportunities that generate additional tourism to the city and to the state.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a great explanation. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate, Mark, your time and all of your work that you're doing to help our economic development team for the city of Wichita. And really want to encourage everyone, if you haven't come out to see Stryker, as I mentioned, if there's a tournament going on and you can catch it at night when you're driving on 96, it's really fascinating to see with all the lights. But anytime, come out to Stryker. Another thing that we just did is, Mark mentioned the keeper of the plane, but throughout the community, we're putting smaller keepers of the planes, keeper of the planes in our parks, and Stryker just received one. And so I had the opportunity to go out and also worked with the artists when they were trying to develop it. So yet another amenity that we have there. But if you have questions about our current city economic development projects, you can visit our website at wichita.gov/economic. I can tell you I go there myself when I need to make sure that I understand and can articulate the difference between a TIF, a CID, a star bond, really good definitions and explanations that are easy to understand. So thank you again for all you and your team do. And thank you for joining us today. I hope that you will get a chance to go out and visit our Stryker Sports Complex soon. Have a great day.